Go back to the Truce Social that was posted about 90 minutes ago, and I'll just come down to this last line. The United States offered a 15-point resolution. The Iranians have a 10-point counter solution. We'll get that in a moment here, resolution, I should say. Many of the 15 points have already been agreed to. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that's the position of the United States. Come on over here. We'll let you know what they're saying out of Tehran. 10-point peace proposal. The first three are significant. We'll see how far they go, right? Non-aggression guarantee on behalf of the United States. That might be a non-starter. Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's considered by many to be international waters. Acceptance of the uranium enrichment. We already know that is a non-starter on behalf of the United States. The next 2, points 4 and 5, deal with sanctions relief from the United States and also the UN. Points 6 and 7 also deal with some of the resolutions that have come out of the United Nations with regard to its nuclear program, including the IAEA. Keep in mind, in the end, if you get to a peaceful resolution, who are the inspectors going into Iran? Will this administration demand that these inspectors represent, in part, this administration, meaning they must be American inspectors? We'll see whether or not the Iranians go for that eventually. Point number 8, compensation for the war damage. They want reparations already. Point number 9, withdraw all U.S. forces from the region. And point number 10, ceasefire on all fronts. That would include Lebanon, which we already know has not been a part of this based on the Israeli strikes in places like Beirut overnight. It's a lot. Retired General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst. And sir, good morning to you. You had a late night last night. I heard you on the air on our program here that you would rather have the military pressure continue, but that heat has been put on pause, sir. What do you think this morning, General?
Well, you've got to look at this from Iran's perspective. Why did they shut down the Straits of Hormuz? What was their objective that they were trying to achieve here? Their objective was simply one: to stop the war. They have achieved that objective. We have indeed stopped the war. So what? And not only that, the Iranians are still in control, Bill. The IRGC Navy has told all the ships in the Gulf to pass through the straits, you need our permission. So they're very much in control of the Straits of Hormuz, and all of those ships are going to abide by those warnings, certainly, that Iran has given. So what's their play going forward here? I think they got 2 plays to make here. One is, obviously, we're going into negotiations. And as you have clearly pointed out, we couldn't be further apart in these negotiations. And that's one of the reasons why Iran published their 10-point plan. I mean, they're bold about it. This is what we want to achieve. But they're setting the stage for extending the negotiations. They are masters at obfuscation and delay. Their objective going into the negotiation will be to delay the negotiations, extend the ceasefire. Why? Well, we're getting closer to a deal here. They will say anything to convince our negotiators of that. We're getting closer to a deal. And what we would do, if we extend those negotiations, Iran is buying for time. Why? Because as time goes by, the oil prices start to come down, the pressure is off the president and the administration economically and financially, and also somewhat politically. And they are counting on that pressure on the president at that point not to have the will to reattack several weeks from now because of the extension of the negotiations. That is what they're counting on. What we should do right now is issue an ultimatum to them based on the 2 weeks. Iran, you meet our conditions, and we know what those conditions are, and the president wants to make them public once again, make them public. And if you don't meet our conditions in 2 weeks, then we're going to reattack. The second play they have, and they're executing it right now, they are attacking our Arab allies in the region. They're still doing that. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they want the Arabs to pressure the administration to shut down Israel's attack in Lebanon. The Prime Minister and the President talked yesterday, and the Prime Minister certainly wanted to continue his operation in Lebanon to clear out all of the Hezbollah that have been attacking into northern Israel and somewhat into central Israel as well. Once and for all, they're going to take down every infrastructure that is there. That is what they're about, and they got ground troops doing it. They're not going to put up with this anymore. In other words, they're going to do something more considerable than what they did several months ago. And they want the permission to do that, and the Iranians want that stopped, and that's their second play here. And certainly what I'm hoping the administration does is support the prime minister on this and let them clear out the Hezbollah from that area. That is what I think is in front of us in terms of what the Iranians are trying to do and what the United States and how we should handle what's taking place here.
J.D. Vance, in an interview just a few hours ago, said that we are in a fragile truce. And I was wondering about that last night. Like, at what point would you think that the truce, would you know that the truce would be broken? Because it's also unclear to me, as Pete Hegseth pointed out, can whoever's in charge in Iran right now get the message to all their people out there in the country to make sure that they don't break the truce?
I don't think that's much of an issue. I mean, it always takes time to get the subordinate units to shut down. And the Iranians obviously have serious command and control issues here because of the decapitation we've done to their leadership and their chain of command. I mean, we're continuing to cyber attack them, continuing to kinetically attack them, up until last night. So, yeah, that eventually will clean up and take care of itself. So I'm not concerned about violations in the first 24 or 48 hours. That'll sort itself out here.
General,
the real issue is they're going to keep firing on the Arabs, though. Go ahead.
Can I ask you this? So there is a proposal to meet in Islamabad on Friday. Right now, based on what you know and what you have just said, should the United States be a party to those talks in 48 hours?
Well, I wouldn't have done what we're doing. I wouldn't have gone to the ceasefire because I think we should take control of the Straits of Hormuz ourselves. But here's where we're at. We're there, and we got to deal with where we're there. And listen, the president has said time and time again, we have very strong conditions. The president is not going to take a bad deal from these guys. That's just a fact. There's no way he's going to let these people enrich, and there's no way he's going to let them keep the enrichment that they already have. The plan on the table, Bill, is you let us come in there and take it out of there, just as we did in Libya many years ago during the Bush administration. We moved the Central Intelligence Agency in there, and they extracted the nuclear program. And that is what's on the table for us. Also, restrictions on ballistic missile programs. Listen, let's not fool anybody here. These people still have launchers, and they still have missiles left here. We had 2 more weeks of this operation to continue on the Israeli side as well as the U.S. side, and we're accelerating every night. So there's still some capability there. And we've got to clamp down on these restrictions on ballistic missiles and drones. And the other major requirement that the president has on the table, and that is no support for the proxies. And there's other conditions as well. I am confident the president is not going to make a bad deal here. That's the reality of it. He's the guy that shut down the Obama deal because it was a very, very bad deal. And he knows these Iranians very well. And I'm trusting the fact, I know where he's coming from, that he's not going to sign up to anything like in that 10-point plan. That's just impossible. But I really think that we lost our leverage by stopping the campaign. I would have preferred to go into negotiations with the war continuing because we have leverage over them as the war is continuing. That's kind of Putin's playbook, isn't it? He doesn't want to go to a ceasefire, and he keeps the war going. So we are where we are. But the president still can get the leverage back very quickly by issuing an ultimatum. You've got 2 weeks to meet my conditions or else. And we go back to where we were.
General Keane, thank you for catching us up.
Great stuff. Thank you, sir. We'll talk throughout the day. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.